Imagine being born in a powerful martial art family but being treated like you are completely useless. You have no talent, your cultivation is ruined, your own family doesn't value you, and eventually you are forced to become a spy for one of the most dangerous organizations in the martial art world. You struggle, you suffer, and finally you die. But instead of staying dead, you wake up 10 years in the past, and this time you have something you never had before. Not a system, not some overpowered weapon, not a cheat code. You can literally hear swords talking. And trust me, that's where the story gets crazy. Welcome back to ANIME PTB. Today we are talking about the Absolute Sword set. It's a Muramurian regression manhwa that takes a familiar idea and gives it one of the most interesting ability I have ever seen in this genre. So let's talk about why this manhwa is actually worth reading. And don't worry, I am going to keep this review mostly spoiler free. So let's start with the story. Our main character is Woodwee, and Woodwee is not typical overpowered protagonist. In fact, his life is pretty much the opposite. He comes from the martial art family, and because his spiritual core is destroyed, he is basically considered as useless. When I say useless, I mean people genuinely treat him like he has no future. Eventually, Woodwee is kidnapped by the blood cult, and instead of becoming some legendary warrior, he becomes a low-level spy. His entire life becomes about surviving, gathering information, following the order, and doing whatever he can to stay alive. But here is the important part. Woodwee always knows how terrible his future is. He knows what happened to him, he knows the people who betrayed him, he knows how the martial art world works, and he knows that his family eventually end in death. During one of his missions, Woodwee is killed while searching for a legendary sword related secret, and that's it. His life should be over, except he wakes up 10 years earlier and back to the time where everything started. Back to the moment before the blood cult completely destroyed his life, and this gives Woodwee something incredibly valuable. Knowledge. He remembers the future. He knows what is going to happen. He knows which people are dangerous. He knows which opponent he missed. And this time he gets the chance to change everything. Now, if you are reading regression manhwa before, you might become thinking, okay, so it's another guy who goes back in the time and becomes stronger. And honestly, that's what I expected too. But Absolute Sword Science has one major difference: the sword. When Woodwee returned to the past, he discovered that he gained a mysterious ability. He can hear the voice of swords and weapons, and this ability is much more useful than this sounds. Think about it. Normally when you are fighting someone, you can only watch their movements. You have to predict their attack. You have to understand their fighting style. But Woodwee can actually communicate with weapons, and weapons have history. They know their owners, they have experienced battles, they remember how their previous users fought. So Woodwee isn't simply learning how to fight, he is gathering information that nobody else can access. And this creates some really entertaining situation. Imagine you are fighting a master swordsman and his own sword is basically telling you how he fights. That's ridiculous, and that's exactly why I like this ability. It's not simple, it's stronger than you think. It's more like I know something you don't, and that makes Woodwee's fights much more interesting because he's not winning every fight just because he has the ridiculous strength. He is using information, he is using strategy, he is using his knowledge of the future, and he is using the weapon around him. That combination is what makes him dangerous. Now let me talk about Woodwee himself. One thing I really like about his character is that he doesn't suddenly forget everything that happened to him. He remembers his previous life, he remembers the people who looked down on him, he remembers the blood cut, he remembers the suffering, and because of that, his personality feels different from someone who is simply get reincarnated and starts enjoying life. There is always this feeling that Woodwee knows how cruel the world can become. He is cautious, he is calculating, and he doesn't blindly trust everyone. At the same time, he isn't just some emotional murder machine. He is actually starts developing relationship with people around him, and that's important because the story isn't only about becoming stronger. It is also about changing the future. Every decision Woodwee makes can create a different result. Someone who died in his previous life might survive. Someone who was his enemy might become an ally, and someone he trusted before might turn out to be completely completely different this time. That gives the story a nice mystery element. Movie remembers the future, but you doesn't always know how much that future is going to change. And that is one of the reason I kept reading. Now let's talk about the action. If you are here for the Muramaren fights, you won't be disappointed. The fightings are one of the strongest part of Absolute Sword Sense, and the sword ability makes the battles feel different from normal regression manhwas. Instead of simply watching two characters throw techniques at each other, Wunwi is constantly analyzing what happened. He looks over the weaknesses, he is gathering information, he is using his opponent's weapon against him, and when he combines that with his knowledge of the future, things can get seriously unfair. But in a good way, because Wunwi doesn't feel like someone who was randomly gifted infinity power. He feels like someone who has been given the perfect tools and knows exactly how to use them. And there is another thing I really enjoyed. The story doesn't completely abandon the martial arts world just because the Wunwi has a special ability. You still get the classic Muramaren elements, powerful sectors, demonic organizations, martial art masters, clan politics, cultivation, hidden techniques, and characters with their own ambition. But instead of Wunwi simply walking into the world as a complete beginner, he already knows how dangerous it is, and that makes his second chance much more interesting. Now, if you are wondering whether Absolute Sword Sense is similar to Nano Machine, yes, you can definitely feel the connections, and that's not surprising. The original creator Anjing is also behind the Nano Machine. Both series have that strong Muramaren atmosphere, but both have the protagonists who have received a huge advantage, both involved in cultivation, powerful organization, and character climbing through the martial art world. But the main character gimmick is very different. Nano Machine focuses heavily on its technological system. Absolute Sword Sense is built around Wuwin's ability to communicate with weapons, combined with regression. And personally, I think that's what makes Absolute Sword Sense stand on its own. Now let's talk about the art. The artwork is really well for the action. The characters have a strong Muramaren design, the weapon looks good, and when the fight gets serious, the panels can look absolutely amazing. There are plenty of moments where you can almost feel the impact of the attack, and that's importance of the manual like this, because it's the action doesn't look good, half the fun disappears. Thankfully, Absolute Sword Sense has enough visual impacts to keep the fight entertaining. But is this manhwa perfect? No, definitely not. One problem is pacing. There are parts where the story moves extremely fast, and there are sections where things get slowed down. Some readers might also feel that Wuvin is more interesting when he is actively involved in combat or strength or strategy than when the story focuses heavily on the other things. And if you are completely tired of regression stories, the basic premiere might initially feel familiar, because yes, we have seen the protagonist goes back in the time connect concept many times. But here is the difference. A familiar premises doesn't automatically mean a bad story. What matters is what the author does with it. And Absolute Sword Sense takes the regression formula, then adds the weapon communication ability and uses it in a way that actually affects the fight and story. That's why I think it works. So, who should read Absolute Sword Sense? If you enjoy Nano Machine, definitely give it a shot. If you like Muramaren manhwa, give it a shot. If you enjoy regression stories, give it a shot. And if you like the protagonist who win through intelligence rather than simply punching hard, this one is especially worth checking out. But if you are looking for a romance to be the main focus, this possibly isn't a manhwa for you. And if you want a complete unique story with a zero familiar Muramaren elements, you might find the beginning of a lit predictable. But if you can get past that, the sword ability really start carrying the story, and that's the biggest reason I would recommend it. Because the concept sounds simple, a guy can hear a sword, that's it. But once you understand what that actually means, you realize how broken the ability can become. And the best part is Wuvin is something even more dangerous than that ability. He has the knowledge of the future, so now imagine putting those two things together, and he knows what people are going to do. And he can communicate with the weapons they are using. That's not just a sword sense, that's basically having the information that nobody else in the entire battlefield can access. And that's where Wuvin becomes terrifying. So my final rating for Absolute Sword Sense, I am going to to give around 8.5 out of 10. The story isn't perfect, the pacing has some weaker moments, and the basic regression setup isn't exactly new, but the weapon sensing ability is genuinely fun. The Murawarian world is interesting, the action is satisfying, and the Wolverine's second chance gives the story enough mystery to keep you wanting to know what happens next. And most importantly, it doesn't feel like Wolverine is simply becoming stronger. It feels like he's rebuilding his entire life. He's taking everything he learned from his previous life and using it to create a completely different future. And honestly, that's what makes this manhwa addictive. Because every time the Wolverine changes something, you start wondering what if the future he remembered so no longer exists. And when that happens, even Wolverine's knowledge of the future might not be enough. So if you are looking for the new Murawarian manhwa, especially if you enjoy Nanomachine, I would definitely recommend giving Absolute Sword Sense a try. If you are already read it, let me know in the comments. Do you think Wolverine's Sword Sense ability is more interesting than the Nanomachine? And what rating you would give to the manhwa? If you are enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe ANIME PTB and turn on that bell icon. I will see you in the next video. Until then, keep reading and keep discovering new world. This is ANIME PT signing out. Tata, bye bye, sayonara.